In Florida, we've got a brand new trial we're tracking for you. The missing boyfriend murder trial for defendant Christopher Davis. This man is accused of killing his boyfriend, Barry Schmalbach. Barry went missing back in July of 2023. His body still hasn't been found. Openings were on Monday. And before we get you caught up, let's share with you the background of this case. Court TV's Cody Thomas reports.
Hearing the word murder it's a lot. Hearing it and having it confirmed brought a whole new wave of emotions.
Barry Schmalbach was reported missing back in July of 2023, and after a year-long investigation, police charged Barry's boyfriend at the time with second-degree murder.
This has culminated with the issuance of an arrest warrant for Christopher Davis.
According to police records, Barry's friends claim he was planning to break up with Davis. He was last seen at Cruiser's bar arguing with Davis before leaving. Barry's body has never been found.
Our end goal hasn't changed. We want to find Barry. And we are well aware that a lot of these cases go unsolved and there's no resolution, and families are always just left wondering what happened to my loved one.
Multiple witnesses claim to have heard a commotion in Barry's condo around 8:30 p.m. and Barry's Jeep leaving around 9 p.m. Davis claims he's innocent and told detectives Barry was on other dating apps and seeing other people that could be of interest.
I'm ready to prove my innocence, and I agree with them that this has taken entirely too long.
All right, so that was Cody Thomas reporting there for us. Now, let's get you caught up on what happened on Monday. So the case opened up. Again, this is in the state of Florida. And so because we were in the Preppy Party murder trial, no one has seen this footage yet. So we're going to share with you this case from start to finish. Here we go with the opening statements on Monday. Up first, of course, the state of Florida.
No! Whimpering. Those are the last noises that were heard from Barry Schmalbach's apartment on July 19th, 2023. An apartment that he shared with the defendant, Christopher Davis. What follows that slamming, the no, and whimpering, is the defendant doing a search on his cell phone for Walmart near me. Going to Walmart, and at Walmart, buying chocolate milk, not one, but 2 rolls of duct tape, and a 12-foot by 24-foot heavy-duty tarp. Today you're going to hear about the victim, Barry Schmalbach, as well as the defendant, Christopher Davis. You're going to hear that Barry, if he was known to friends, was loved. He was always in communication with them. He called them. He texted him. He was never not next to his phone. Quick responses. Even if he was in a different country, he still would get a hold of them. You'll hear that he was meticulous about keeping everything clean. His car, which he basically would say he lived out of mostly, as well as his house. He was not someone to be okay with items that were in disarray or being a mess. Barry was from Chicago and moved down to Florida in 2022. But he still kept friends in Chicago. He kept in communication with one of his best friends, Rosalie Malico. You'll hear that he had some medical issues, and because of the medical issues, he lost about 100 pounds. And he was walking daily. A walk that the defendant started joining him on when they met in May of 2023. They met at a Cinco de Mayo party, and within weeks, the defendant and the victim were living together. And members of the jury, within 2.5 months, the victim was gone. There's been no activity on the victim's accounts, his cell phone, his financial records, nothing, since July 19th, 2023. And the person that saw the victim last, the defendant, Christopher Davis. you will hear from a multitude of witnesses, one of them being Miguel Blanco. Miguel Blanco was one of Barry's closest friends here. You'll hear that they met working at Restaurant Depot, and they kept in communication for years, even moving down to Florida. You'll hear that Miguel actually had a key to Barry's condo due to the fact of Barry having the heart condition. You'll hear that Miguel had to tell the defendant to file a missing persons report, and that Miguel actually had to file one himself. And members of the jury, you're going to hear over and over again as the state brings you a multitude of photographs, videos, and other items and testimony from Miguel as well as other people that Barry is not in any of the photos. He is not in any of the videos. The person that is the defendant, Christopher Davis. You are going to hear that over and over and over and over again, whether it be in Walmart, Target, Ace Hardware, or disposing of evidence. That is what you are going to hear. Now, to explain the investigation, we have a retired detective. His name is Bryce Bierman. He was with the Cape Coral Police Department until 2024. This was one of his last cases that he worked. And he is going to come today, as well as the rest of this week, and he is going to explain to you, day by day, by day, by day, the actions that the defendant took after he killed Barry. Now, members of the jury, you are not going to see Barry's body. You are not going to be hearing from a medical examiner in this case. We don't have a body. What we do have are the defendant's actions. The defendant buying duct tape, neighbors witnessing something heavy being moved. Sounds like a plastic tarp. The defendant buying air fresheners, renting an Airbnb, buying a pickaxe, buying a shovel, disclosing of those items, and giving a multitude of stories. Stories that all conflict. So if we begin with July 19th, you're going to hear from witnesses, such as Ruth, who's a neighbor. You're going to hear from a Lyft driver who took Barry and the defendant to a place called Cruisers. It's a bar in the Cape. You're going to hear that while at the bar at the Cape, he texted his friend Rosalie and said, "I'm at the bar with my BF, but I am so done with the BS. Please call me tomorrow. I miss you so much." Then you're going to hear a couple hours later, Rosalie got a text back. And it didn't make sense. It didn't sound like something Barry would send her. And you'll hear what that response was and how she knew it wasn't Barry that sent it. You're going to hear from a bartender as well as another patron who'll say that it looked like something was amiss between Barry as well as the defendant. They didn't leave at the same time. Barry paid and then left, and then Chris was in a different room, and then shortly there followed. And you'll actually see videos of the defendant and the victim walking back to the condo at 1835 Beach Parkway, Unit 303, a third-story condo complex with the top floor being where Barry lived. You'll also hear that during that walk back, Barry called Miguel Blanco, his friend. The last voicemail that we have from Barry is given to Miguel. "Give me a call. I need you." Told Miguel before the defendant, Christopher Davis, is heard slamming Barry against the wall. No, no, whimpering, and then silence. And members of the jury, you're going to hear that because Kim Zanzatani, who lives in the apartment underneath Barry and Chris, hears that. She hears the slamming. She hears the no, no, and she hears the whimpering, and then silence. Chirp, chirp, for Barry's Jeep being opened. You're going to see the actual video of the defendant walking into Walmart, buying the duct tape, buying the tarp. And what's interesting is he pays for cash in these items. Then you'll hear about July 20th, the next day. You'll hear that Detective Bierman will explain to you that Barry is not seen or heard from on the 20th at all. The last known message out It's about 8:30 the day before, p.m. Nothing after that. No digital footprint, nothing. The only thing you see is the defendant driving Barry's Jeep, using Barry's credit cards, making up stories that conflict with one another. You'll hear that Barry had an iWatch that he wore all the time. You'll see the defendant in a lot of the videos and photographs wearing Barry's iWatch. You'll also see that the defendant does multiple searches for Airbnbs. Members of the jury, he lives in a condo in Cape Coral, and he's doing Airbnb searches in Fort Myers, Lehigh Acres, Cape Coral, Naples, North Fort Myers. And then you'll also hear that he did a search for a place called Ochapi, which is kind of in the Everglades, a very rural, marshy area. But ultimately, he finds a place in Clewiston. Clewiston, members of the jury, is in Glades County. You're going to hear that Clewiston is kind of like old Florida. There's briars, there's bushes, there's palm trees. It is overgrown, and there's not a lot out there, especially in the area where he ends up renting a place, Montura. Montura is acre and a half lots. Some of them have a house on them, most of them don't. When you walk through them, you get cut up. The briars get you, the sticks, whatever it may be. It is rural Florida. But before he does that, what you are going to hear is that on the 20th, he also calls Discover Credit Card Company, which is a company that Barry has a credit card from. You'll actually see a photo of the credit card. It's a Blackhawks NHL credit card, Barry being from Chicago.
We're going to hit the pause button right here. What do you think so far? We've got more unaired footage from the missing boyfriend murder trial straight ahead. And later, next hour, more testimony rolls on in the Preppy Party murder trial in Connecticut.
The brutal murders of 4 University of Idaho students.
Oh my God, this doesn't happen here.
Detectives arrested 28-year-old Brian Kohlberger.
You could tell there was some off about him.
He was stalking them. He was hunting them.
Forget about motive. We don't even have a connection.
This trial will be on Court TV.
And I pray that we have justice.
The Idaho College Student Murders Trial. Live coverage begins this August, only on Court TV.
Thanks so much for being with us. So let's go back to Florida right now. We got a brand new case we're tracking called the missing boyfriend murder trial. The defendant is Christopher Davis. He's accused of murdering his boyfriend, Barry Schmalbach, and disposing of his body. Barry went missing in July of 2023. His body still hasn't been found. We're showing you footage we didn't get to show you yesterday when opening statements kicked off. Here's more now from the state of Florida.
And he'll use that credit card at Starbucks, which was Barry and Chris's normal place to stop. And you'll hear from one of the employees say that when she asked where Barry was, Chris's response was, working. Then you'll see Chris go to Lowe's and buy a hand truck, which is a dolly basically, to move heavy items, fridges, boxes, whatever heavy items you have. Then he goes to Target. He uses the victim's Discover card again. Barry is still nowhere in sight, and he tries to withdraw money from an ATM. And then you'll end the day with a phone call from PNC Bank. It is one of the banking institutions that Barry uses. And members of the jury, listen carefully during that phone call. That phone call is not made by Barry, it's made by the defendant. Listen how, when the woman that is working for the bank asks him for his social security number, he waits. "11 seconds before he's able to give her his social security number. When asked what his mother's maiden name is, he gives the first name a couple times. Pauses, kind of makes small talk before giving the name again, as well as his phone number. You're going to hear from 2 different witnesses, Miguel as well as Kim, who are going to tell you that's not Barry's voice, that's the defendant. That is the defendant's voice on that call. Nowhere in that call is Barry's voice. You're going to hear about July 21st in the wee hours, about 4 a.m., from one of the other neighbors who hears what sounds like something moving on a heavy tarp. You're going to hear that he looked outside, saw movement, saw somebody dragging something, and then he's going to say that it matched Christopher, the defendant, his gait, the way he acts, the way he moves. You're going to hear that light bulbs were unscrewed, and those light bulbs that turn the lights off, they matched Christopher's fingerprints. You're also going to hear about black tubs that the defendant was carrying back up to the condo. And these tubs are important because when we go to Montura's Airbnb, those tubs are also found. You're going to hear about the defendant then going to put gas in Barry's Jeep, buying air fresheners in Walmart, and then driving to an Airbnb in Montura. Again, this is Clewiston. And he rents that Airbnb under the name Tyler Gamble. Not his name, under somebody else's name. And you're gonna notice and see that the Jeep he is driving all the way to Montura is on what is known as LPRs, which are license plate readers. And the detective is going to explain to you that a license plate reader is going to take a picture of the license plate as well as the vehicle. And you'll see the vehicle is spotless on the outside. What you'll notice, though, is the next day, the vehicle now has dirt and mud all over it after being in Montura Ranches. Now that Airbnb, how I described Montura, it's just like that. Wooded, overgrown areas, needle in the haystack. That's where he rented an Airbnb. An hour and a half away from Cape Coral. Well, he gets to Clewiston, and he goes to Ace Hardware. He goes to a bank, gets money from an ATM using Barry's information again. When he goes to the Ace Hardware, he buys a pickaxe and a shovel. Then, his phone doesn't have any data usage for 3 hours. From approximately 12 p.m. until 3 p.m., there are no text messagings, phone calls, searches, nothing from the defendant after buying a pickaxe and a shovel. You're going to hear that when his phone stopped having communication with it, he was at the Airbnb. But 3 hours later, he's about 10 minutes away when it comes back on. 3 hours that are unaccounted for. The Airbnb host is actually going to testify that she saw clothing hanging off the banisters at the Airbnb, which she thought was weird because he only rented it for one night. That's not normal. But you'll hear a lot of not normal about that Airbnb. You're also going to hear that the defendant's cell phone goes quiet again from 6 p.m. on the 21st until 11 a.m. on the 22nd. There are searches, but there's not phone calls, and they're very few and far between, those searches. While Christopher is in Clewiston himself, Miguel and his partner, Tom, they go and check on Barry because they've been calling, they haven't heard from him. They have a key to the house, so they go in. There's packages outside, they bring the packages in, and what do they see? The inside of Barry's condo is a mess. That's not how Barry would have kept it. And then you'll hear about the 22nd. The Airbnb host that rented a place to Tyler Gamble sees the defendant running and knows that this is the defendant because he's oversharing with her. He's telling her, oh, I'm going for a run, and then I'm going to check out, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do that. And you are going to hear from her as she tells you what he told her. And that Tyler Gamble in the photo is not Tyler Gamble. It's the defendant, Christopher Davis. Now that Airbnb, she's going to tell you that when she went into it to clean it, because her and her mom own it together and they clean it before they rent it out to the next person, they notice things that don't make sense. There's a ton of debris inside. There's sand everywhere. There's areas that are matted down. Furniture has been moved around. Stuff that's not normal for her normal people to come visit for a night, especially somebody that's there by themselves. As the defendant is driving back to Cape Coral, Miguel will tell you that he urged the defendant to file a missing persons report and ended up filing a report himself. But what does the defendant do before filing a missing persons report? He goes to the Ace Hardware in Cape Coral, and you'll see the video of the defendant doing this, driving Barry's Jeep right up to a dumpster, pulling out a pickaxe and a shovel and throwing them away.
Oh my gosh, how dreadful. Do you think investigators will ever recover Barry's body? Let's talk about that. Let's bring in our guests. I have former law enforcement officer Claudia King with us and attorney Randolph Rice with us as well. Good morning to you both. Claudia, to you first, that question, please. Any hope, do you think, is out there to bring Barry's body back home?
Good morning, Julie and Randolph. Unfortunately, there's probably little hope that they will be able to bring this victim home. It's been a few years already, and based on kind of some of the facts that we've heard thus far from the prosecution's opening statement, it does sound like potentially, if we're going to believe everything that they say, that potentially this victim was dismembered and thrown out somewhere in a wooded or marshy or sandy area, which could mean water. So unfortunately, I don't think that we're going to be lucky enough to bring him home.
Right, Claudia, well said. This is just awful to think about, but that is the reality for his family, sadly. In terms of getting justice for his death, Randolph, would love for you to analyze, please, the state's open so far. Is it effective in your view?
Yeah, good morning, guys. I think it was incredibly effective. She did a great job of laying out that timeline and that smoke, right? This is not a case where we have fire. This is a case where we have a lot of smoke. And I think it seems to be a lot of smoke that's not good for Mr. Davis from this opening. I mean, we've got buying a tarp and duct tape. I can think of some reasons to do it, but when you couple it with then buying a pickaxe and a shovel and then disposing of those items and all these other things that are laid out in the state's opening, it does not look good for Mr. Davis.
No, not at all. This is just awful. And there's more from the state in the open. Randolph, you're right. I think very effective so far. There's still a little more to go, so we're going to play that on the other side of the break. More analysis and Court TV live coverage continues. Go refill your coffee. We're at the bottom of the hour now. We'll be right back live in Florida after this. This morning, we're in Florida for the missing boyfriend murder trial for defendant Christopher Davis. This man is accused of murdering his boyfriend, Barry Schmalbach. Barry went missing back in July of 2023, and sadly, his body has never been discovered. Here's the latest from day one of the trial from our affiliate in Southwest Florida. Reporter Caitlin Knapp has more.
The trial of a suspect accused of killing a missing Cape Coral man whose body has not been found has started. I'm Fox 4 senior reporter Caitlin Knapp, and I've been covering this case since the beginning, back in July 2023. And I was in the courtroom when the trial began on Monday morning. Christopher Davis switched his clothes from an orange Lee County Jail jumpsuit to dress clothes shortly before his trial started. Cape Coral police say he killed Barry Schmalbach, his then boyfriend, nearly 2 years ago, but detectives have not been able to find his body. Despite that, they charged Davis with murder, tampering with evidence, and 7 counts of criminal use of personal identification information. After selecting a jury on Monday afternoon, both sides wasted no time and started opening statements.
No!
With prosecutors describing what police believe happened to Schmalbach.
Those are the last noises that were heard from Barry Schmalbach's apartment on July 19th, 2023.
And the defense telling the jury they might hear speculation about what may have happened to Schmalbach.
So what I ask you to do is wait before you make any formulated or fixed opinions until you've heard everything.
One of Schmalbach's friends, Miguel Blanco, was the first person to report Schmalbach missing and testified about a message he got from Schmalbach the last time he was seen.
Hey, give me a call. I need your help.
After you heard that voicemail and you expressed concern, Who did you voice that concern to?
Tom, my husband.
Davis was seen crying as Blanco testified. Other witnesses came up, including lead detective Bryce Bierman, who says he believed Davis killed Schmalbach based on what Bierman pieced together.
What are these two items that are being held by the individual in the black shirt and white shorts?
That is duct tape.
The detective was the last witness of the day, and the trial will continue on Tuesday.
If Davis is convicted for the second-degree murder charge, he can face up to life in prison. I'll be in the courtroom every day bringing you the latest. Reporting inside the Lee County Courthouse, Caitlin Knapp, Fox 4.
All right, our thanks to Caitlin Knapp for that report. Now we're playing all of that unaired footage that started Monday with the opening statements. We were in that other trial in Connecticut, so let's go back in. Let's hear more from the state of Florida.
Within 24 hours of buying a pickaxe and the shovel, the defendant threw them away. He then calls law enforcement, tells them Barry's missing, and he's kind of worried about him. You'll hear that actual 911, you hear the 911 call that he made, where he's oversharing and telling the dispatcher all sorts of information that seems like it's too much. It's weird. And then you'll also actually see the body-worn cam with the officer that talks to the defendant that day. You'll hear that later that night, Becky Weber, who's one of the neighbors, she'll testify that Chris was worried. He said things like, "I'm worried, I think Barry is gonna leave me and kick me out," and asked Becky to come help him look for Barry's phone. When she looks for Barry's phone, she goes into the apartment, condo I should say, and she sees a wallet. And it's Barry's wallet she sees. She knows it's Barry's wallet because, again, Barry's very meticulous. He has everything in a certain spot in his wallet. Every card is a certain way. The way he is everything is perfect. Now, after the 22nd, when the defendant is finally reported missing, when the victim is finally reported missing by the defendant had called him a few times since then, off and on. But after he's reported missing, there's not a single phone call that the defendant makes to Barry's phone. Then you'll hear about July 23rd, where the defendant starts looking up history on the web for how to reset a Century Safe code, how to find a Century Safe factory code and reset the combo. Searches where to buy that exact same safe. This is a safe that Barry had in his condo. The exact same safe in his condo is what the defendant is looking to buy and looking to crack open. Now, the fingerprints of the defendant are actually found when law enforcement goes on the back panel of the safe that Barry has. The only way that you're going to hear that to do that is to actually take off the front of the code key panel. And that's what the defendant did. You're going to watch a video of the defendant pushing a safe out of Home Depot. He's also going to be having a swing bar guard lock, which is, when you go to a hotel, you have those locks that kind of go over and clasp, so if somebody tries to come in, it'll block them. You're also going to hear that he bought basically a new lock for a door. Well, if Barry's missing, wouldn't Barry need to get back into the condo? After he buys this, he buys it with the Discover card of Barry's, not his own. And he calls the number for Century Safe. You'll hear back on the 24th that the defendant goes to Starbucks. And while at Starbucks, he talks to Cindy Thomas again. But this time, Barry's missing and it must be a hate crime. He's only been missing for a day or two. Well, we're on the 24th. A day or two is when he filed the missing persons report. But again, nobody has heard or seen from Barry since the 19th. You're going to hear that after he goes to Starbucks, the defendant calls a place called Anna Teresa Aesthetic Medicine. And he makes an appointment. He makes an appointment to get fillers in his face. He gets Sculptra, which builds over time, which is a type of filler, as well as a filler for his lips. Now, what's interesting about that is that on middle of May, he makes his initial consult with them. He puts his address as the address with Barry, as well as he does not put Barry's name on his emergency contact, but he puts the address. But 2 days after he reports his boyfriend missing, he makes an appointment for cosmetic fillers. And guess how he pays for those fillers? With Barry's credit card. Over $1,400 in fillers. You're also going to hear that the detectives do a search warrant. They do a search warrant on the defendant's phone. They do a search warrant on the house. They do the search warrant on the defendant. They do a search warrant on anything. And what do they find? Well, what they don't find is a body, but they do.
Okay, let's back the truck up for a minute here. So he's making the appointment to get the dermal fillers in his face and does it right after his boyfriend is missing and uses his boyfriend's card to pay for it. So seems to be wanting to look his best. Why would you need to look your best if the love of your life just goes missing? Aren't you just going to be worried about bringing them home? Let's talk about that. Domestic violence expert Claudia King is here, and so is former prosecutor Randolph Rice. Claudia, what do these facts tell you?
Nothing good for the defendant at all, I would say. And like you just mentioned with the filler or light plastic surgery, is he trying to look his best? Is he trying to look a little different? Or maybe a little of both? I think if the prosecution can prove what they have told us thus far in the opening, then this is really not good at all for the defendant, and I'm not really sure how they're going to be able to combat this information that we've learned thus far. It's not good.
Right, no. Randolph, as a former prosecutor, how do you like these facts here of those, we're talking hours after the disappearance, right? Like the crucial hours that could be just gut-wrenching for someone missing their loved one, and he's going to the doctor.
You know, to use a famous line from Senator Kennedy, Chris Davis is the reason they put instructions on the back of shampoo bottles. He may be the dumbest criminal I've ever seen. And it's just amazing that, the fact that he's not calling his boyfriend after he disappears, the fact that he's getting fillers done, and the fact that he's trying to crack open the safe, it just keeps getting worse and worse as this opening goes forward. So I'm not sure how the defense is really going to get around all these facts. It just seems like an airtight case, and I'm not really sure why Mr. Davis is even trying it.
Yeah, that's a great point, Randolph. I know, you wonder, did they offer him something? This looks very, very bad. You can't buy Botox at the commissary. If he goes to prison, he's going to be living without it. Claudia, tell me, looking at the relationship, you're an expert in DV. Are you seeing any signs of DV here? I know it's early and we're just in the open, so I'll probably ask you this again once we get to more witnesses, but anything jumping out to you where you're going, oh, red flag, red flag?
Yeah, I would say the first red flag was the fact that they moved in together so quickly after the start of their relationship. So that doesn't necessarily mean that there is DV, but what it does tell us is that one or both of these individuals may have a problem being alone. So if that is the victim, did this defendant, Mr. Davis, see something in him? Did he see the victim, maybe wanted that companionship? Did he see that he did not want to be isolated? That moving in so quickly is always a red flag for me at the potential of somebody who's struggling and could be taken advantage of in a relationship.
Sure, that's a great point. Yeah, something to think about. Big red flag if somebody's over anxious to get involved with you. Could mean they're looking to manipulate you. Claudia King, Randolph Rice, great points from you both. Stand by, please. We're going to hit a break. When we come back, we'll show you more from the missing boyfriend murder trial. And later this hour, we turn to Connecticut as the Preppy Party murder trial resumes.
A high school party ending in a fatal stabbing.
It was very hectic. People started yelling, screaming.
But what led to this tragedy in an affluent community?
The Preppy Party murder trial. Live coverage today on Court TV.
Sean Diddy Combs. We're previewing each day's proceedings in the trial that has captivated the nation. And a closer look at true crime cases across the country.
Opening statements with Julie Grant. Mornings at 8, 7 Central on Court TV.
Back to Florida, we want to take you now. We've got the missing boyfriend murder trial going on there for Christopher Davis. His boyfriend, Barry Schmalbach, went missing in July of 2023, still hasn't been found. You're seeing unaired footage this morning. Let's listen to more of the State's Open.
But they do find that he has scratches all over his body in the stages of healing. Kind of similar to if you're walking around the woods in Montura. You're also going to hear that when they ask him about the scratches, he says, I was trying to put a harness on my cat. That's where the scratches are from. You're going to see pictures of the Jeep with cleaning supplies in it. Air fresheners. Air fresheners he bought a couple days before at Walmart. You'll see the video of that too. You're also going to see and hear from friends and family, such as Barry's close friend, Leo Giacchetti, who also is the victim's power of attorney, and will tell you the last time Barry used his card is when Chris was using it. And Barry's not one to give a credit card out. Barry would sometimes give cash, but never a credit card. And you'll hear that over and over again from all of his friends and family. You're going to hear the detective state that he spoke to the defendant, and the defendant said when he got home from cruisers, he went straight to sleep, and when he woke up at 4 a.m., Barry was gone. Well, that's weird because we see him multiple times. We see him on a video in Walmart. We see him making or hear him making phone calls. You're going to hear multiple discrepancies in the defendant's story of what happened to Barry. You're also going to hear that on July 28th, Barry's wallet was found. The same wallet Kim saw when she went to go help the defendant a few days earlier. And where it's found is a storm drain. A storm drain that is on the walking path for Barry and Chris. It has a bunch of Barry's credit cards in it, but not all of them. Because most of the other credit cards, when they did a search warrant of Chris in the condo, those credit cards were in Chris's wallet. Barry Schmalbach, Barry Schmalbach, Barry Schmalbach, over and over again. Not a single credit card in that wallet had Chris's name on it. They were all Barry's. Also inside that wallet was his identification card, Barry's. Inside that safe is his passport. Barry didn't leave, members of the jury. And that's what the state will prove to you today. You're not going to hear from a medical examiner. You're not going to hear a body. See a body, excuse me. What you are going to see and hear is the defendant buying duct tape, a tarp, air fresheners, pickaxe and shovels, renting an Airbnb in a rural, remote area, and the defendant's own conflicting statements. Using the victim's credit cards for his own will, as well as all the actions he took up until the point that the search warrants were served. At the end of the trial, the state will come back to you and ask for the only just verdict in this case, a verdict of guilt for the crimes of second-degree murder, tampering with evidence, and 8 counts of fraudulent use or possession of personal identifying information of a deceased person. Thank you.
And there we have it. The State's Open. Let's get some final thoughts from our guests, Randolph Rice and Claudia King with us. Randolph, you saw the full thing now, the State's Open. You liked what we saw about halfway through. How are you feeling now as she walked away from that podium?
Yeah, that should be an example in law school, exactly how you do an opening statement. She laid out exactly what you were going to hear about. She didn't get too deep. She didn't get in the weeds. She didn't talk about exact details that witnesses were going to talk about. She covered the high points. She covered the most important points. And that's how you're supposed to do it. So I think it's an A+. She did a great job. I think the jury's exactly the way they should be set up for the state's case.
Yeah, really appreciate that. Excellent analysis from you and Claudia King, as always. Randolph, thank you kindly.